Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend this session, which is going to be on the subject of Loctite dispensing equipment. We're also going to be providing you with some useful information on different methods of dispensing adhesives and some of the things you may need to consider. So before we move into the real bulk of today's webinar content, I just want to cover off a couple of housekeeping points just to make sure that your experience of today's session is as good as it can be. So all of the audio is managed through your computer, so make sure that your volume is on sufficiently. And for best performance, if there's any applications that you're not using at the moment, then perhaps you might want to shut them down. If you're working remotely, working from home, and you're using a VPN, if you can switch that off, then that may make it run a bit better. Now, this is a live broadcast, so if at any time we have any connection issues, we apologise for that, and just bear with us and we'll try and get back online as soon as possible. And if at any time the sound becomes out of sync, then you can just use your normal refresh button on the browser and that should correct the issue. We're running a Q&A session live in the background, so if you've got a question during the content, if you pop your question in the Q&A section, then we have a colleague who's fielding those questions live, and so we'll respond to you as we go through. If we don't get to your question during the session, then we'll make sure that you get a response afterwards. So the webinar itself is due to last for approximately 40 minutes. There's about 40 slides and 5 videos. So out of the 40 minutes, we'll be presenting for about 35 minutes, and then there'll be a quick Q&A session at the end. So let me just introduce you to the people you're going to be seeing today. So there's myself. I'm Neil Harper. I'm a regional equipment engineer, and I work for Loctite. You'll be seeing a bit more from me in a little while, but for now, I'll hand over to my colleague, David.
Thank you, Neil. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Loctite Dispensing Equipment webinar. Just briefly introduce myself. My name is David Gettelson, and I am an equipment engineer here at Henkel. So just to go through what we're going to talk about today is we're going to go through why you might want to use some dispense equipment, briefly touch on different types of dispensing equipment, then focusing on the pressure time principle. I'll then hand you over to my colleague Neil, who will talk about the volumetric principle, wrap up the equipment with a summary, and then we'll go to the questions and answers. So why might you want to use some dispense equipment? So when you're applying adhesive in a manual process by hand, the quantity of adhesive that you apply may vary operator to operator. So for example, if you apply too little adhesive, this may increase your quality issues of your finished assembly, and you may have failures. If you apply too much adhesive, then one, you're using extra adhesive that you don't need to. You'll have extra processes in terms of cleaning and rework, and the adhesive could even get into places where you don't want it to get to. All of this increases your costs. That leads nicely into where you actually apply the adhesive. So not only the amount, but actually the position in which you apply the adhesive itself. So when you're doing this manually as an operator, you may be applying it in different places each time. And this could reduce your quality, and again, that reduces the finished assembly, and you have increased scrap rate potentially, and again, that just increases your costs. You may have a large production volumes, so you may need a lot of operators to meet the targets that you have, and that is labour intensive, and again, that just increases your costs. And finally, as you are doing it manually, the operator could have contact with the adhesive, so you have some potential health and safety concerns and some extra PPE requirements. Now, I've kind of painted a grim picture there, but don't worry, Loctite dispensing equipment can resolve all of these issues. So just to summarise then, the main advantages of using dispense equipment, excuse me, you get a metered dose, which can improve your quality. And what that means is you get the exact amount dispensed every time. Therefore, you reduce your waste and improve your repeatability. if you link this up with some automation, then not only do you get an improved amount of adhesive, but you can also have a better repeatability with the position of the adhesive. What that does is that reduces the variability due to your manual inputs. And then that, in turn, reduces your labour costs and reduces the cost of the total process. And the final added benefit of that is you reduce the contact of the adhesive and therefore improve your health and safety. So we're now going to briefly touch on different types of dispensing equipment. So the first type of dispensing equipment could be manual devices, such as a manual or pneumatic handgun. The second one could be for large areas, such as screen printing. And then finally, automatic dispensing of drops and beads. And it is here where we're going to focus our time today, specifically on the pressure time systems and the volumetric pump systems. So moving then on to the pressure time principle. So the pressure time principle then, how does it work? What you can see here in the image on the right is an adhesive bottle placed directly into the reservoir. What's really important here, and that is a critical point, is that the adhesive isn't decanted or poured into a reservoir. You simply take the lid off the bottle and place that directly into a reservoir. What you then have is a product tube which goes through the reservoir into the body of the adhesive. The other end of that product tube is then connected to a dispense valve. Now what you do is you apply air pressure into that reservoir. What that does is it pushes the adhesive out of the bottle, up through the product tube to your dispense valve. Now with a pressure time based system, the amount that you get dispensed is independent on a few factors. It's dependent on a few factors, and those factors are pressure. So if you increase the pressure, you will get an increase in flow of adhesive. Vice versa, if you decrease the pressure, then you will get a reduction of flow from the adhesive. Likewise with time, if you're dispensing for a longer period of time, then you will obviously get more adhesive than if you're dispensing for a shorter period of time. Some valves have what's called valve stroke, and what this does is you're actually controlling how much the valve opens internally, so you can restrict the flow or increase the flow using the valve stroke. With your dispense nozzle at the end of the valve, if you have a small diameter tip, then you can actually restrict the flow, and if you have a larger diameter tip, then you can increase the flow. Temperature and viscosity have an impact on how much adhesive that is dispensed. If you have the same pressure setting, such as 1 bar, acting on a viscosity such as water, then you will push the fluid through your system a hell of a lot more than you would if you had a material such as golden syrup viscosity. And how temperature has an impact on this is, as temperature increases, the viscosity of your product will decrease. So that's why temperature has an impact. So moving on to our reservoir system then, this is our integrated semi-automatic dispenser. It's a 2-litre pressure vessel made from die-casted aluminium. It has an integrated electronic timer module. And what this does is it gives you a timed dispense, so you can set a specific time that you need to dispense for, or it also has a continuous mode where it will continue to dispense for as long as you tell it to. It has a precision air regulator. This is how you set the pressure. And on this unit, it's 0 to 4 bar. It has a manual venting valve. So what you can do here is if your adhesive has run out, for example, you can depressurize the unit using this valve, change your bottle to a new container, repressurize it using the valve, and then carry on without having to turn it all off. It has a pneumatic solenoid valve, which is used for opening and closing of our valves. And at the base of the reservoir, there is a sensor, and that's our level sensor. It tells you how much adhesive is left in the bottle, and it displays that on the front, green to red LEDs, so you know exactly how much adhesive is left. And because it monitors the amount of adhesive is in the bottle, you can use this in semi or automatic systems. Here on the right, you can see our valve selector chart. We have many valves that can be used with the integrated semi-auto, and this selector chart just gives you some information on each valve. Now you would choose a valve depending on the type of adhesive that you're using, the chemistry of the adhesive, the viscosity of the adhesive, and potential flow rates that you might have, whether you need a fast or slow flow rate. But for the purpose of today's webinar, we're going to focus on the ergolock valve. Our ergolock valve is our handheld valve. It has an ergonomic design, so it fits well in your hand. It's lightweight and easy to use. It's mainly used for low viscosity, and as discussed, this has stroke adjustment on it. If you now pay attention to the images, the one on the left, you can see the red, which represents the adhesive in this case, and the grey plunger is fully forward, blocking the path of the adhesive. When we open the valve, you can see that grey plunger has moved backwards, and the red adhesive now flowing through the nozzle until we stop dispensing. When we stop dispensing, that grey plunger moves forward and cuts off the adhesive path. Now moving then on to the advantages and disadvantages then of our reservoir system. Some of the advantages are that it's very easy to set up and it's very simple to operate. These are reliable machines. They are very robust, they're good for industrial applications, and they're very little maintenance. They will suit all standard Loctite bottles, and they'll suit high viscosity products. These are general of lower cost, and they're suitable for a vast range of applications that there may be out there. Moving on to the disadvantages then, these are not volumetric systems. Neil will later describe what a volumetric system is. So as discussed, the flow can be influenced by your viscosity or temperature changes. So an approximate rule of thumb on this is a 10°C increase reduces the viscosity by 50%. So now we move on to our first video, and this is showing our integrated semi-automatic dispenser with the ergolock valve in action. So here you can see the operator setting a time dispense using the plus or minus button, confirming that setting by pressing the enter button, and now what he'll be able to do is dispense some dots precisely, repeatedly and accurately. He's now increasing the time dispensed by pressing the plus button, and he's confirming the new setting by pressing the enter button. Now what you'll see is he'll have a larger dot due to the increase in time, but it will still be repeatable, accurate and precise. The operator has now put the unit into continuous mode, which is the second mode of operation, by pressing the plus and minus button together. This now enables him to draw a line or bead of adhesive. We'll now just move on to a quick application case history. So this case history, we had an O-ring cord, which was being bonded into a recess in a prestige display case. Now there were loads of different sizes of display cases. They were all bespoke, so they kind of leaned towards a manual application rather than an automatic due to the high variance in sizes. And the challenge on this application was that there was to be no excess adhesive anywhere, so therefore we had to control the amount of adhesive that we applied. Now the solution to this was we used the integrated semi-automatic dispenser with the ergolock valve, and the adhesive that we used was Loctite 480, which is a black rubber toughened cyanoacrylate. Now the benefits of using this equipment in this application was we were able to give precise control of the adhesive flow during the manual application of the adhesive, and this resulted in no excess anywhere, so they always got the desired result. Moving on to the second system then in our pressure time principle range, and this system is a syringe system. Our unit is called the digital syringe dispenser, and what you can see on the image on the right is a syringe with the adhesive represented in the red, and what you can see is a piston at the top. You apply air pressure above the piston right at the top, that pushes the piston down into the adhesive, which pushes the adhesive out of the bottom through the dispense tip. So our digital syringe dispenser then has a precision digital air regulator and digital display. And what this means is you can accurately set your pressures and your times, the parameters needed to dispense, which ensures consistent results every time. Although this isn't a reservoir, this is a syringe, but it's important to note that it's still a pressure time operation, so all the factors talked about previously are influenced here as well. This unit has a vacuum suckback to prevent dripping after dispense, and what that means is the unit is applying a small vacuum pressure constantly. Your dispense pressure overcomes this, you get your desired dispense, and then when the dispense is finished, that small vacuum pressure then just pulls the adhesive back into the dispense tip, only a small amount, say 1 or 2 millimeters, and what that does is it gives you a clean cut-off and no dripping. The digital syringe dispenser detects pressure variation plus or minus 10%, and it will alert the operator. If you've adjusted the pressure yourself, then you can simply confirm the change and carry on. But if you haven't made the change, then it will alert you to the fact that the pressure has changed. The digital syringe dispenser is compatible with all our syringes or 300ml cartridge, and it is ideal for dot or bead dispensing. We now move on to our second video. This time it's the digital syringe dispenser in action. And again, what we'll see is some dots, a change in time, and higher dots. So you can see the operator has dispensed some dots precisely and accurately. He's now increasing the time of dispense. He'll confirm that new setting by pressing the Enter button. You will then see him dispense some more dots precisely and accurately, but the dots have increased due to the increase in time of dispense. The operator has now pressed the continuous button, which puts the unit into the continuous mode, which enables him to draw lines or beads of adhesive. So some of the advantages and disadvantages then of a syringe system. Again, these are very easy to set up, very simple to operate. As you can see from the video, simple pressing of the plus or minus and the Enter button confirms the settings and changes the settings, so it's nice and easy to use. These systems are very robust and reliable and used for industrial applications with very little maintenance. As already stated, they suit standard syringes and 300ml cartridges. And you don't necessarily have to have a pre-filled syringe. You could manually fill your own syringe, attach it to our unit with an adapter, and then you get the controlled dispensing from your manually filled syringe. It will dispense a wide range of viscosities, and again, this unit is generally lower cost. Some of the disadvantages then, again, it's not a volumetric system, so the flow can be influenced by your viscosity and temperatures. This system isn't a valve, so you don't have a start-stop or an open and close. What you have is a build-up of pressure, followed by that pressure dissipating in the vacuum system to control your starting and stopping. The digital syringe dispenser doesn't have a low-level sensor on it, so on this occasion, the operator has to keep an eye on how much adhesive is used and is left in the pack and change it before it runs out. So because of this, it probably isn't usable for automatic applications. So I've now just gone through why you might want to use some dispense equipment, different types of dispensing equipment, and the pressure time principle. I'm now going to hand you over to my colleague Neil, who's going to go through the volumetric principle, wrap up with the equipment summary, and then go through some question and answers. Thank you for listening to this webinar, and I hope you have a lovely day. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. So I'm going to talk to you now about the volumetric principle and some of the items in our range that are equipment, the volumetric dispenser. So I'm going to cover how it works and also how it is different to the pressure time dispensing. So with a volumetric system, the dispense volume is dependent on displacement of a volume of fluid due to the rotation of a mechanism pump system. Typically, this is a rotor and stator or an auger or a screw type arrangement. And with the volumetric systems then, the things that can influence the volume of adhesive dispensed are the speed of rotation. So naturally, if you rotate the mechanism quicker, you'll get a higher flow of adhesive. And also if you slow it down then, you would get less adhesive. We can also change the duration for which we rotate. So obviously if we have a longer dispense time, we'll get more adhesive, and obviously a shorter dispense time will be less adhesive. And then we can also consider here the size of the pump will have an influence. So we have different sizes of pump in our range, and if you had a higher flow application or maybe slightly larger drops, you might select a larger pump in comparison to a smaller pump if you were doing smaller drops. Now, what I'm going to cover here in this section are two primary types of equipment. So there's the peristaltic pump system and then our eccentric rotor pump system. So the first of those units is this you can see here, which is our digital peristaltic dispenser, or what we call our PU20. Now, this unit allows for completely air-free dispensing direct from the original product container. Now, that's a real key point here, is this unit requires no air pressure, no air supply. So perhaps around your workstation, if you don't have compressed air, or even in your factory environment you don't have compressed air, then this unit's perfect because it just requires normal electricity, 110 to 240 volts, and you can place it on your workstation and away you go. And this unit will combine both precision and flexibility for handheld or semi-automated processes. Now, what we mean by that is that you can see from the image that the original product container is there, and we have the product tube passing through the neck of the container, and the adhesive then is drawn out of the container through the tube and over a set of rollers down towards a dispense pen with a nozzle on it. Now, the operator can hold the pen in their hand and press the button to trigger the dispense, and then place the adhesive manually where it's required. Also, it's entirely possible to put the pen onto perhaps a robot or some other method of manipulating the head, and the placement of the tip is then done automatically or semi-automatically. So it's flexible in that it can be used for both approaches. And the volume here for this unit is controlled or adjusted with these three things. So there's the motor speed to start with. So if we increase the motor speed, then we encourage more material to flow down the tube towards the nozzle. And then if we slow the motor down, we'll get a lower flow rate, and then we'll be able to do smaller beads and smaller drops. The dispense time itself is adjustable, so the unit can do timed shots. So if we dial in a small time, we'll get a small drop, and a longer time, we'll get a larger drop. And then tube size on this unit is a consideration. So for this unit, we have 4 different tube sizes available. So if you had a particularly low viscosity, thin material, or you were looking to do very small drops or thin beads, then you may consider a smaller tube to be the one that you need. But if you had a very thick material, you were doing large drops or thicker beads, then you may select one of the larger tube sizes. So we're going to show you now a quick video of this unit. And in a similar fashion to the videos we've already seen, the video will go through drop dispensing and then bead dispensing, and we can see the operator changing the settings to go from one to the other. So the first thing we see here is some very small drop dispensing, and you'll notice that each of the drops are identical, they're very precise and very accurate. And then by changing some of the settings, here we're increasing the time and then also increasing the motor speed. You'll now see the operator can do drops that are slightly larger, but still perfectly repeatable, accurate and precise. And then lastly, the unit's been put into manual mode, and we're able to draw straight lines or any shape we like in this continuous fashion. Some advantages and disadvantages of this unit. So firstly, the advantages are that the unit's very, very easy to set up and very simple to operate. So you saw just from the video that it's very easy to change the parameters. And something that wasn't mentioned in the video, and something that's important to understand, is that this unit's got a program functionality on it. So we're able to set all the parameters and save them under a particular program number. And then let's say you had a second component that was slightly different, you needed a different flow rate or a different quantity of adhesive. You could then set up those parameters under a separate program number. So when you want to switch between components, you're able just to switch program numbers rather than change all of the settings every time. So the unit's very good at precise dispensing, small drop dispensing, small line dispensing. And we have a controlled suckback on this unit also. So in a similar fashion to the syringe dispenser, on this unit we're able to reverse the direction of the motor. So after we've dispensed forwards, we reverse the motor and we draw material back up the tube and up the nozzle just by a couple of millimetres, and that just allows for a nice clean cut-off and no dripping. The unit itself is designed to be an industrial unit, so it's extremely reliable and it's very low maintenance. It's nice and small and compact, so it's easy to place on a workstation. It's not very intrusive into your work area, and it's also nice and portable. And it suits smaller bottles and typically smaller dispense volumes. The important point to mention here with this unit is that the adhesive at no point comes in contact with any of the moving parts. So the adhesive is either inside the original container, or it's then inside the product tube, or inside of the pen and the nozzle. So it doesn't contact anything, and there's nothing to clean. And it requires only electricity, as I've mentioned. Some disadvantages of this unit are that it is only suitable for lower viscosity materials. Give you a bit more info around that. What we mean by low viscosity is a material that if you was to place a blob of it on the bench, it would under its own weight flatten out and self-level. This is what we mean by lower viscosity. If your material does that, then it's suitable for this unit. If it doesn't, and it manages to hold its shape under its own weight, then it's possible that it's slightly too thick to make its way down the tube sizes that we have here. And for these materials, we have other solutions, just not this particular unit. And this unit is mainly used with smaller pack sizes. And the reason for that is because that mainly applications for this unit are very small, precise applications. So typically your adhesive usage is reasonably small, so the pack sizes it's supplied in would also be small. It's not to say that we can't use bigger pack sizes with this unit. It's as simple as placing the feed tube in through the neck of a larger bottle, and away you go. And we do recommend that the feed tube requires changing at monthly intervals. It's just a preventative maintenance measure, and it's good practice. And this unit also does not have a low level sensor, so it's entirely down to the operator to monitor the level of the liquid in the bottle to make sure you change it before it runs out. Here's a case history then for using the PU20 Peristaltic dispenser. So in this application, the challenge we had is that the adhesive needed to be placed on a very small area. It was like a very small land area around the component. And also, it was not allowed to have any visible adhesive outside of the joint once the component was assembled. So we needed to really precisely control the amount and the flow rate and also the position. So what we did here is we teamed up one of our benchtop robots with our PU20, and we used the robot to manipulate the pen into the correct position around the component. So what we used here is our 200D robot with the PU20, and the adhesive we used was Loctite 480, which is a black rubber-toughened cyanoacrylate. The benefits of this system was that we were able to achieve for our customer a very fast, repeatable dispense with very accurate and repeatable adhesive volume and no scrap. So I'm going to move on now to the second item in the volumetric principle section, and that's our eccentric rotor pumps. Now, the eccentric rotor pumps work with a positive displacement technology, and this is moving adhesive down a rotor and stator arrangement, or as I've said before, an auger or screw arrangement. So we turn the rotor inside of the stator to pass material down the mechanism using the cavities in the screw. So with this method, our dispense volume can be adjusted using the rotation speed. So if we speed up the rotation of the screw, then we're going to encourage more material to pass down towards the nozzle. And likewise, if we slow it down, then we're going to get less adhesive. The length or duration for which we rotate the screw will have a big impact. So clearly, if we rotate it for longer, we're going to get more adhesive, or a shorter period, we'll get less adhesive. And then the pump size. So I think I mentioned previously that we offer a couple of different pump sizes here. So if you use the larger pump, then you will encourage a higher flow and more adhesive in comparison to the smaller pump with a smaller flow and smaller drop sizes, smaller beads. Now this is a real key point I'm about to say here, and this is the main difference between pressure time systems, which David's mentioned, and volumetric systems, are that with volumetric systems, we're almost entirely independent of fluctuations caused by changes in temperature which affect the viscosity. So if you remember back to what David said, if you get a difference in your environmental conditions and your temperature rises, then your viscosity will lower, which means it's thinner and easier to pass through the system, so you're likely to get more adhesive when things are hotter. Now with a volumetric system, because we're displacing material down a known cavity in the screw, it's volumetric, we know what we're dispensing, and we're not affected by any of those changes. It's worth mentioning that Loctite have in our range solutions for volumetric dispensing of single component and also two component materials. This graph here represents what happens when we see a temperature change and how it affects the different systems. So if we focus first of all onto the red line, and you'll see looking from left to right, you'll see that the temperature increases from 10 degrees up to 40 degrees. And the pressure time principle systems, the red line, shows over that temperature increase, the volume dispensed will also increase. And this is because, as we've mentioned, the viscosity is lowering, it's becoming thinner, it's easier to pass through the system. It's in comparison and contrast to the grey line, which is representing volumetric dispensing, and you can see here that regardless of the temperature in the environment, the dispensed quantity is almost perfectly repeatable. We go on now to another quick video. Now this video is a nice schematic which shows the actual mechanism of the volumetric dispense. So this is the rotor and stator arrangement, and we're going to see here the mechanism and how the adhesive travels through the system. So it'll show us how it's working, and the adhesive here is going to be represented in green. So there you can see the rotor turning inside of the stator, and when we cut it away you'll see the mechanism, and the adhesive is travelling through the cavities and down towards the nozzle. So as we add the rest of the valve into the graphic here, you'll see there the nozzle at the bottom, and the rotation is causing flow of the material. And we have both single part solutions, and the two-part solution is that V-shaped valve which you saw there. For advantages and disadvantages of eccentric rotor pumps, advantages are clearly that we're highly accurate and highly repeatable, regardless of our environmental conditions. They're very, very accurate, and they have adjustable flow rate control, and we have a nice touchscreen controller for these units, so very, very easy to adjust the settings. And by design, the mechanism itself is self-sealing, so once you stop rotating the mechanism, there's no path for the adhesive any longer, so it should stop immediately with no dripping. However, if your adhesive is particularly stringy or it's particularly thin and is subject to maybe some run-on, then we also have the suck-back feature here on this unit, and we're able to reverse the direction of the screw to draw material back up through the mechanism, only 1 or 2 mil again, but that just gives us a clean cut-off and no dripping. We have solutions, as I've said, for single component and 2K materials as well. And more recently in our range, I'd like to point out that we've launched a solution for volumetric dispensing of cyanoacrylate or superglue technology materials. It wasn't previously possible just because of compatibility issues, but that's been resolved, and so we've now launched a unit until we can offer volumetric dispensing of cyanoacrylates. Some possible disadvantages of these units are that they're not suited to handheld applications. Now, let me give you some more behind that. What we mean there is typically if you've selected a volumetric rotor pump, it's because your application is probably high value or high precision, and therefore you've probably employed some other method of manipulating the valve, a robot, some other method. And therefore, typically for volumetric applications, they're not handheld applications because they're moved by some other method. That's what we mean by that. And of course, it's a higher accuracy system, so there's a slightly increased cost in comparison to pressure time. Another case history here then. So for this particular application, we needed to apply a very small drop of a Loctite UV adhesive. And we had to apply it into the threads on a locking ring. It was really important for this application that not only was the drop size repeatable, but it was also in exactly the same place on every ring. So we again used a robot for the placement reason. We used a volumetric pump to make sure that the deposit was accurate. And the reason we had to have it accurate, both in terms of size and placement, was that the cured drop of adhesive actually acted as an interference. So when the ring was mated with its other part, then it acted as a vibration protection, and it was a safety critical application, so we needed to ensure it was repeatable. So we used here the larger of our compact rotor pumps, along with its touchscreen RC15 controller, along with some Loctite UV curing equipment and a benchtop robot. And we was able here to achieve for our customer a very fast and repeatable dispense, along with the cure in the same system. It was highly accurate and repeatable for our customer. Okay, so that really covers the main topics that we were going to be doing here today on the webinar. Now I want to move now briefly just on to a general equipment summary. So I just want to reiterate what we've covered. Now, firstly, Loctite has a very broad range of equipment, way beyond what we've managed to talk to you about today. So we're able to provide solutions for accurate and repeatable dispensing for almost all applications and all adhesives. So we can help you to improve the finished bonded assembly and the quality of your process. So we've looked at today the pressure time reservoir system, the pressure time syringe dispense system, the volumetric peristaltic dispenser, and then lastly we looked at the volumetric rotor pump dispenser. And you can be assured that in the Loctite range we have solutions for all applications, right from manual handheld applications all the way up to fully controlled and robotic applications. So what we're about to show you then is a summary video. Now this summary video shows you equipment that we haven't had the opportunity to explain to you in detail about today during this webinar, but pay attention. If there's anything there that catches your eye or you think that might offer a potential solution for an application which you have or perhaps you're designing, then feel free to contact us. In a couple of slides' time, I'll be giving you some ways of contacting us. So feel free to reach out to us. We'll be pleased to talk to you about any application which you may have. So let's enjoy this video. Okay, there we go. So hopefully there's something there that caught your eye, and as I say, feel free to contact us. So we're going to move on now to a quick Q&A session. So as I said at the start, one of our colleagues should have been fielding some questions as we go through. So maybe if you've put a question in the forum, then you've already had your answer. We'll pick a few here and we'll answer them live. And yeah, rest assured, if your question doesn't get answered here, then we will get back to you afterwards. No problem with that. So that's okay. Let's just pull up the questions here then. Let's just go down and have a look. Yeah, okay, so let's take this one. So, does the adhesive dry out or go hard in the equipment? That's a great question. It's one that we get quite a lot, actually. So, the quick answer is no. It's not going to dry out or go hard in the system. And the reason for that is that essentially it thinks it's still in the original container. Now, if we take a reservoir system, for example, David said earlier on, that it's important that we understand we don't need to pour or decant any material from the bottle into the reservoir. That's not how it works. In our systems, we just remove the cap and we place the original container inside the reservoir, and then we place the product feed line inside through the neck of the bottle and sit it into the body of the material. So the adhesive is still in the original container at this point. It knows no different. Beyond that point, we pass the material up the product tube and down towards the dispense valve. And all of the contact parts are either plastic, some kind of low energy material like PTFE, or even if it's metal, it would be some kind of passive material such as stainless steel. So the material's got nothing to react with. It thinks it's in the original container. The only possible place you might get a bit of curing will be at the very tip of your nozzle, where it's exposed to the environmental conditions. And if that happens, you can either just pick off the little bit of adhesive that's cured and carry on, or if it's gone too far, then you can just remove the nozzle. They're designed to be removable and disposable. So you can remove the nozzle, place a new one on, prime it up, and away you go. It's as easy as that. So hopefully that answers that question. And let's pick another one then. So yeah, okay, this one. So how do you clean out the system? Again, good question. So let me deal with a couple of different systems here. So if we think of firstly about a syringe dispenser, that's really simple. We can just remove the syringe from the end of the adapter and your system's clean. There's no proper cleaning to do on that at all. If we go on to look at the peristaltic dispenser, that's also very simple. And if you remember, I said about removing the tube and replacing it every month. So if you wanted to, perhaps you're changing adhesive to a different grade for some reason, or you're preparing for a shutdown period, then you want to flush the system out or clean it. For the peristaltic system, it's as simple as removing the tube, and that's it. We said before that the adhesive is not in contact with the machine, with no moving parts, so there's nothing really to clean. Remove the tube, and that's job done. If we think about a reservoir system, it's a little bit more involved, but still very simple. So let me explain the process on that. So for a reservoir system, the first thing you need to do is remove the product container. And we just have the product feed tube just in free space inside the reservoir. If we then apply pressure to the system, we're able to prime any adhesive out of the tube and out of the valve. And essentially then we have an empty tube with just a residue of material around the walls of the tube. We then place acetone or something similar to that, place a container of acetone in the reservoir, place the tube in the body of the acetone, turn on the pressure, and we then fill the line with acetone. Acetone will remove that residue from the walls and also any surfaces inside of the valve. And then you can prime a small amount into a waste container, and you can just collect that and dispose of it. Next, what you do is you remove the acetone container, and now we place the tube back into fresh air, and we then turn the pressure back on and remove the acetone from the tube, which will take with it any residue. We just then carry on for 30 seconds or so, just priming with air, just to make sure that everything's evaporated in the system. And now what you've got is a completely clean system, and it can sit forevermore, completely empty, until you're ready to use it or prime it up again. And that process will typically only take 5 or 10 minutes maximum. It's a very, very quick process. So that's answered that question, I hope. And let's take, where are we on time? Yeah, so just one more then. So, okay, this is a big one. What happens if I have a problem? Okay, so in the unlikely event that you do have an issue, your first port of call would always be the equipment manual. So in the back of our manuals, we have a troubleshooting section. It's a little table, and it'll take you through some steps, different things to check. And normally, the majority of the issues will just be minor problems, and you can resolve them just using the troubleshooting guide. Beyond that, if you don't find the solution there, then we have a technical helpline. So you're able to phone up our helpline and speak to one of our experts, and they will offer you some additional steps and things to check, and hopefully that will find a resolution for you. If you still have a problem at that point, then we're able to escalate your concern to an equipment engineer. So someone like myself or David or one of our colleagues, and we will help you, and we'll try and get to the bottom of the issue for you. And then lastly, if we can't solve it by one of those methods, then you can be assured that we've got a full team of engineers that are representing every region in every country. So we'll have someone local to you, and we could get them to come and see you and find the problem. Good. Okay. So yeah, we're run out of time there, unfortunately. So I think we just have one more slide. Yes. So I just wanted to show you here just some of the ways that you could get into contact with us. So we're available on all the normal platforms. So you can find us on LinkedIn, YouTube. We have our own website, obviously. So feel free to contact us. We'd encourage you to make contact with us, talk about any current applications or problems that you need to solve. And also, if you're in the design phase of a project and you're thinking about using adhesives, you don't know how to dispense them, then contact us and we'd be pleased to assist you. I'd like to also point out that you will receive an email summary after this session, and there'll be a link to a recording of this webinar where you're free to review it or perhaps show it to some of your colleagues who've not been able to attend today. So all that leaves me to do is just to wrap up and say thank you very much for your attention. I hope that what we've spoken about and what the information we've provided has been useful to you. And as I said previously, I'd fully encourage you to make contact with us. If you've got any potential applications, we'll be more than pleased to help you. So thank you again for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.